Hey everyone, Mr. Macintosh here. In this video, I'm going to show you how to unlock universal control on your 2012 to 2017 Mac. I already walked you through how to unlock AirPlay, but now it's universal control's turn with OpenCore Legacy Patcher. I'm going to give you a full walkthrough on a supported 2015 MacBook Pro, and then all the way back to a 2012 MacBook Pro that is unsupported with macOS Monterey. We got a lot to cover. Let's jump in and get started. Universal control is one of macOS Monterey's best features. The only problem is that Apple left off some models from the supported list. So if you have, for example, a 2017 MacBook Air or a 2015 MacBook Pro, you're disappointed that you can't use the feature. On this document here, I'm going to go over really quickly the requirements that you're going to need before we begin here. I always put detailed chapters in the description of this video below here, and I also put an update section in case something changes from here and in the future that you might need to know about. For this procedure, I mentioned we have two different ways we're going to do it. We're going to have OpenCore Legacy Patcher installed on a 2012 to 2015 Mac, but for a 2015 to 2007, we're going to be using OpenCore Legacy Patcher and a USB drive. So if you don't want to use it anymore, you can just unplug the USB and your Mac's just the way it was. Now, before we begin, one of the most important things is to back up all your data. Anytime we're going to do anything with the Mac, including install software updates or anything like that, I always recommend to back up your data. So if something does happen in a small percentage, all your data is saved. Now, the equipment that we're going to need is a USB flash drive. The minimum OS requirements are macOS Monterey 12.3 and iPadOS 15.4 if you're going to be using an iPad. Now let's talk about the non-Monterey supported Mac required hardware. The minimum requirement to be able to unlock universal control is a Bluetooth 4.0 card. And these are the supported Mac models that have Bluetooth 4.0. A MacBook early 2015, MacBook Air mid 2012 plus, MacBook Pro 2012 plus, Mac Mini 2011 plus. We just found out that that model has Bluetooth 4.0, which is kind of crazy. iMac late 2012 plus, and Mac Pro is not supported for 2010 and 2012 unless you update the Bluetooth card to a 4.0 card. Now keep in mind, some of the Mac can have an upgraded card, so if you upgrade those, you can use it. Now let's talk about Macs that can install macOS Monterey, but universal control is not supported. Mac Pro 2015, MacBook Pro 2015 13 and 15 inch, MacBook Air 2015 and 2017, Mac Mini 2014, and iMac 2015 21.5. All those can install Monterey, but universal control is not supported. Now here's the list of universal control Mac that are supported here, and I've got some links down here that you can go to. These are the Apple's universal control requirements, OpenCore Legacy Patcher, the GitHub. Okay, we'll break this next section up into two different parts. The first part will be for Macs that do not support macOS Monterey from 2012 to 2015. Then the second part is going to be for Macs that do support Monterey, but Apple did not enable universal control for them. So let's get started in the first part here for 2012 to 2015 unsupported Monterey Macs. Okay, the first demonstration Mac for the unsupported Monterey based Macs is a 2012 13-inch MacBook Pro. This Mac is 10 years old and does not support macOS Monterey, but we've installed Monterey with OpenCore Legacy Patcher, and this will allow us to be able to unlock features and run the latest operating system. Installing the patcher onto this Mac is outside the scope of this video because there's so many steps that we have to follow. But in the upper right hand corner of this screen and in the description below, I'll put the latest link to my full walkthrough on how to install Monterey with OpenCore Legacy Patcher on your unsupported Mac. Once you have it installed, like on this Mac, and you're ready to go, then you can pick up from this section here. And what's nice about these Macs from 2012 to 2015 is that universal control is automatically enabled right away with no extra steps. So let's take a look at that. All you need to do is go into System Preferences, log into the Apple ID that you're going to use on your iPad, your second Mac, and your third Mac, because they all have to be in the same Apple ID. You can't use one and then use a second one and intermix. Then you can go into Displays and then click on universal control here, and we can make sure that all these check marks are checked. And once they are, you're ready to begin testing universal control with a second Mac or an iPad. So click on done. The next thing you want to do is that the way it's set up is that if you have a Mac nearby, usually around 3 feet away, then you can just bring your mouse cursor to the screen here and drag it off and connect. Or on the other side, the same thing as if you have an iPad, you can just drag your cursor over here and connect to the Mac. Now what you can do is connect by clicking this Add Display drop-down box here. When you click on that, you'll see two sets of options here. You should see Link Keyboard and Mouse, that's universal control, and then you should see Mirror or Extended to, and that's Sidecar for iPad, so you can be able to extend your screen. And for Mac, it's AirPlay, so you can use your Mac as a second extended display or a mirrored display. Now, I already went over that in my Unlock AirPlay video if you wanted to take a look at that, but we're focused on universal control here. So if you see the Mac in here or your iPad, all you need to do is click on it once and give it a second or two here and it will connect. And there we go. And there's our iPad to the right of us. All we need to do is bring our cursor over there. And now we're on the iPad. If we bring it on back here, we're back in the main screen. Now let's connect a Mac. And all we need to do is go back to Add Display here. And let's add our 2015 MacBook Pro. We'll click on that guy right here. Give it a second to connect. And there we go. All we need to do is bring our cursor off the screen here, and we'll open up our other screen sharing here so we can watch that cursor work on the other Mac here. And there we go. There's a cursor, and then we'll bring it back and we'll move this out of the way so you can see the cursor come back to the other screen. And there it is. Back onto the 2012 Mac. Wonder if we tried to connect to the 2019. If we click on this, we'll get an error message that we can only connect two different Macs to the one Mac that you have, and one iPad or one iMac or two Macs maximum. So there's your connection status. Now, if we only want to connect one, we can just right click on here, or we can, or if you wanted to disconnect one, just click on Add Displays and uncheck here, or you can use the universal control menu bar item up here to be able to disconnect the MacBook Pro here and just use the iPad and also disconnect the iPad, and then we'll be right back at the main screen with no screens connected. Now, one more thing before we move on here is that third option to automatically reconnect your Mac or iPad. That means that if it's sleeping, it won't be there for you to be able to connect to. Same thing with the iPad. If the smart cover is closed, it will not show up. But as soon as you open it up, it should show up then and automatically reconnect for you with universal control. And if you don't like that, you can just click on there again and turn that off so you can manually go in here. If it keeps connecting and you don't want it to, just go in here and then you can just manually connect to it. So that's universal control on your 2012 to 2015 Unsupported Mac. It's really simple to get it working, and it's amazing that the OpenCore Legacy Patcher can get this wonderful new feature working on a 10-year-old Mac. Let's move on to the next section. Okay, in the second part of the video, I'm going to go over how to unlock universal control on your macOS or newer supported Mac, but Apple did not enable universal control on it. So for example, this mid-2015 15-inch MacBook Pro can run on Monterey really well, but Apple did not enable universal control. So let's take a look at that. If we open up System Preferences here, click on Displays, you'll notice that the universal control button is missing, so we can't use it. All we can do is use AirPlay right now to extend our screen to another Mac. What we need to do is use OpenCore Legacy Patcher to be able to tell the operating system that it's a newer supported Mac, and then we will be able to use universal control. So let's go over how we can do that. So first of all we need is a USB stick and OpenCore Legacy Patcher application. So first what we'll do is we'll plug in our USB stick here. What's nice is that you can use almost any size USB because we're using a very small space on it. So what we'll do is we will erase this USB first. Make sure that if you have any files on here to back them up first, we'll open up Disk Utility in Applications, Utilities, and then what we want to do is make sure we click on View and make sure all devices is selected. Then we will be able to click on the top level USB here, and notice how it says External. Once we have the top level selected, we want to click on Erase, and this is where we'll see that extra scheme here. Make sure that when we format it, macOS Extended Journaled and Untitled would be just fine, and then GUID Partition Map is just fine. We'll click on Erase. Okay, we're done. We'll click on Done here. We're done with Disk Utility. We can close it out. Now we got to go to OpenCore Legacy Patcher's website and then click on the GitHub link, and I'll put a link in the description for you to be able to get there. Scroll down and go to the latest release right here and click on that link, and then scroll down here. And what you want to be able to do is click on OpenCore Patcher.zip. Right now it shows GUI, but in the future it's going to be one version of the patcher. So we'll click on OpenCore Patcher app.zip. and it will download it to our downloads folder. And when it's done, it'll hop up and down. Now we can minimize this window here. We can open up Macintosh hard drive or click on Finder, click on Applications, because we are going to click on Downloads and then move the OpenCore Patcher application to our applications folder, let go, and there it is. Now we're ready to start. Let's double click and open up the application. OpenCore Legacy Patcher was an app downloaded from the internet. Be sure you wanted to open it. Yes, we do. Okay, now we're at the main screen. What you'll notice here is that the model is already selected. We have a 2015 MacBook Pro, which is MacBook Pro 11,5. Now you'll also notice that build and install OpenCore is grayed out, and that's because OpenCore Legacy Patcher has detected that we are running a native model that we don't need to patch. But we can go into the settings here, and then we can click Allow Native Models, and then uncheck Show Boot Picker. And now we'll be able to do some actions inside the application. Where we're going to go next is the SM BIOS settings here, because this is what we're going to do when we set up the bootloader on the EFI partition. We're going to tell the operating system we are a newer Mac and to be able to enable universal control. So the settings that we have to set here are the spoof level and the spoof model. So first of all, we're going to click on Allow Native Spoofs here. And then for the spoof level, we're going to click on Moderate. The SM BIOS spoof model, we're going to have to pick a model of Mac that supports universal control. Now, if we go back to my sheet here, and again, I'll put a full list in the description here of the video, but if we go back to our universal control supported Mac models, we have a MacBook Pro that we're using. So let's go to our MacBook Pro section. So we know that we have to pick a 2016 or newer MacBook Pro model from the list. So where do we go next? I like to use everymac.com. It's a wonderful site, but I'm also going to put these model IDs down in the description so you don't even have to go here if you don't want to. So all we need to do is scroll to a 2016 model here. So let's click on the 15-inch late 2016 model here, and then we can look at the identifier here, MacBook Pro 13,3, and that's what we're going to use. Go back here and we'll click on the default here, and then we'll scroll up to 13,3 for a 2016 MacBook Pro 15-inch. There we go. And now we have that set, and we can return back to the settings. Now what we're going to do is we're going to go back to the main menu here, and now we see that the build and install OpenCore button is now selectable. So let's click on that now. And what this is going to do is when we click this build OpenCore button, it's going to write all the settings that we just set inside the application to this temporary folder right here with all the settings. Now what we need to do is take those settings and install them into an EFI partition on our USB disk so we can boot from it. So click on Install OpenCore. Now we got a selection screen here that says, well, where would you like to put the information that we just selected there? Well, we don't want to put it on our internal hard drive because we want to be able to use the USB to boot off of those settings. So what we want to do is make sure we see our USB drive right here. So we can click on disk 2, our USB SanDisk right here. Now it's saying, where would you like to put it? We are going to create an EFI partition here by clicking this button here. And then it's going to say we can do that, but you have to be an administrator to do so. Type in your administrator password here and then click on OK. Now you can see it created an EFI partition, it mounted it, wrote the files to there, and then it unmounted and the OpenCore transfer is complete. We can return back to the main menu and close OpenCore Legacy Patcher. Now we are ready to boot off of the USB drive. All we need to do now is click on the Apple icon and hit restart, and we're going to hold down the option button. So click on restart. Now I'm holding down the option button on the keyboard so we can get to the boot picker screen because we're going to boot off of our USB drive next. Okay, there's our chime. Keep holding the option key here until we see all the drives. Now we see all the drives. Now we can hit the arrow key or use our mouse over to EFI boot. And then we can click on return. And then we'll see our Macintosh hard drive and hit return again or click on the button. Now what we're doing is we're booting off of the bootloader of the OpenCore Legacy Patcher off of our USB drive to tell the operating system that, hey, we're a 2016 MacBook Pro. All right, we're back at login window here. We'll log in. Now there's two things that we have to keep an eye on here. First of all, the computer name will change when we do this. So you want to, if you had a specific computer name, go back into sharing here. So you want to check your computer name just to make sure it's still the same. Now we're going to go back to the main menu here. Now one thing you're going to see here is that you're going to have to update your Apple ID settings. What you're going to see when you first come back in is when you go into Apple ID settings, you're going to see something like this message coming up saying update your Apple ID settings, and then, or you'll get a message pop up like this that says the Mac cannot connect to FaceTime because of a problem with your Apple ID. And you might see something like this too when you're in your Apple ID settings. So once you go in here and you authenticate yourself again, then we will be right back. Okay, we're all authenticated. We don't see any notifications down here. We don't see any red circles that say that we need to authenticate our account again. We're good to go. What we need to do now is reboot the machine and set the USB as the default hard drive if you want to be able to boot up this way every time. So we'll click on Apple here and we'll click on restart and we'll hold down the option key. And there's our chime. And then we want to hold down the control key. You'll see that it turns into a circle here, and then keep holding down option and then hit enter. And now we can click on the control key again. It'll turn to a circle, hit enter, and now it'll always boot up off the USB. Now, if you don't want it to boot up off the USB anymore and you want to just go back to your normal Mac, just unplug the USB and then hold down option and select the Macintosh hard drive as your default drive again, like we did. And then you're back in as using the operating system without any of the OpenCore Legacy Patcher bootloader. Now we're back into the operating system now, and what we can do right away, go into displays and see if we can see our universal control machines here. Now I recommend rebooting twice here. So go up to Apple and reboot twice, and 2 times you usually do it where it's ready to go to be able to connect here. So let's click on displays and then click on add displays to see if we can see all of our machines. And there we go. We can see our 2012 and we can see our 8th generation iPad. Let's connect to the iPad here. And there's our iPad. We can just drag our mouse off the screen here. And now we're on the iPad and we'll bring it back. And now let's connect to our 2012. And there it is. Now we have 2 devices. We can bring our mouse cursor off again. And now we're on the MacBook Pro. Let's bring our screen sharing up here so we can watch that happen live. And we'll bring our mouse over here and then we can see, there it is. In your other screen, we can operate this and move the screen around here. We can bring it on back and then we're back on the other screen. If you wanted to, you can actually drag the orientation. You can just drag this over here if you wanted to, or drag the iPad to the other side if you want to be able to do that. And the same thing, if you want to disconnect them, you can click on add display and uncheck these, or you can go into the universal control menu bar icon here and disconnect the 2012 and just leave the iPad here, or disconnect both of them by disconnecting the iPad here, and then you're back to using the main display here. Now I want to go over some quick troubleshooting if you can't get one of the Macs or the iPad to show up. When we click on add display, you should always see the link keyboard and mouse if you have a Mac with at least 3 feet away from your main Mac. So if you take it outside that range, you could see it disappear and not even show up at all. Now let's say you're having some weird interference issue where maybe all you need to do is move it from one side to the other side of your desk. Take the Mac or the iPad, move it over here, then give it a second, then click on add display again and see if you can see it over there. What Apple also recommends is that what you can do is go into universal control, uncheck all the options here, and then click done and reboot the system. Once you get back up from a reboot, go back into universal control and enable all the options again, and that might get the Mac to show up again. Make sure also that when you go into displays and you go into general, make sure that allow handoff between this Mac and iCloud devices is activated. And you can do the same thing on the iPad. Make sure you go into settings of the iPad, click on AirPlay and handoff, and make sure that handoff is enabled and cursor and keyboard are enabled on the iPad. Now, if you're still having trouble connecting to universal control, I put out a full video guide on troubleshooting, setting up, and getting everything going with a full live demo if you wanted to get more information about universal control. If you have any questions, be sure to put them down in the comments. And if you like this video, and give it a thumbs up or a share, I'd really appreciate it. And if you want to see more videos like this in the future, click on that subscribe button. And I really wanted to thank all my viewers and especially my Patreon members. You guys are awesome and I really appreciate you. And we'll catch you in the next video. Thank you.